So, very good morning, very warm welcome to all of you joining here for this first of 7 teachings on karma, cause and effect, interdependence, and also right conduct, the paramita or shila. So, and also for those of you joining later on YouTube, then very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and wherever you are. And I know some of you are joining from a long way away, other places on the planet. So we start as always, and I know many of you have heard this before, but it is a new course and there are some new people. So our starting prayers or thoughts or motivation are very, very, very important. When we're learning about karma in this course, so in order for karmas to be made, then there need to be 6 factors present. And one of them is the driving force that makes you do something, the motivation. So depending on the motivation, the strength of it, how it is, then the karma that you make can be powerful, less powerful, helpful, harmful, and so on. So here we're in this phase of starting a series of teachings and starting today's teachings. And we want to go into it with a very pure, a very good, and as much as possible, a very powerful motivation. Then that will make our hour and a half together something useful for this life and for future lives. The karma survives death. That's the very nature of karma. We take it with us when we go. So much of what's part of our life now doesn't survive death. Of course, the people, the places, everything we can't take with us, and it very quickly disappears. And then also our intelligence, even our ability to speak. If we believe in karma and reincarnation, then look, we leave this life eloquent, knowledgeable. We can discourse on so many things, maybe in several languages. 9, 10, 12 months later, if we're reborn as human, all you can do is scream. Where did it go? Where did it go? Not only can you not express yourself, you can't understand what the other people are saying. So much stops at death. But some things survive, karma, and especially Dharma. Dharma, so we try and make it really powerful. We try and stop in our tracks at the beginning of a teaching and find the very, very best mind possible. And we define that in 3 ways. 1, a big mind, and big means inclusive. So we feel we're here for as many living beings as possible. We're learning to be a wiser, kinder, more efficient human being for all of them, but in particular because sentient beings are an idea. It's very important to include the real beings that we've known and met, and especially the ones who are part of our own karma, our parents, our siblings, children, and then friends, enemies, those who've been very much part of our story in this life. Very, very vital to include them totally. And whatever happened, to feel I'm here, learning, practicing Dharma, so that when we come back together again and again in future lives through the power of karma, then my input into our meetings, our dialogue, can be something helpful, pure, and liberating from, if there's been harmful karma, a way to get out of the recurring mess. So we have an inclusive mind, and then in particular for those who are in deep suffering, as humans, as animals, invisible spirits, people in psychotic states of mind, hells, mind like hell, very particularly aware of them. So a big mind, and then a happy mind, because although there's so much suffering, we have Dharma, we're on the path, and we're getting out of suffering for sure. However long it takes, whatever work it takes, we are on the way to a pure heart, a connected mind with the Buddha nature that we studied in our last course. So a very happy mind, very big and inclusive mind, and then a loving mind, because the way we are feeling right now should be unconditional, profound, loving care, compassion for each and every sentient being, no matter how horrible they are at present, whatever's going on, every single one of them, without exception. We try and feel that way. And then in the last course, I started using English language prayers to start, because I feel that communicates with more people. Only a minority of you know Tibetan, and so I like to do the prayers in English. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering. And may they attain the great equanimity, free of closeness or distance to anyone. Deyata shamme shamawati shammata shatra Om kurimam kurimarajite karota Ke orite jovati olloyane bishuda nimale malapanaye Kukure kaka grase grasana Omuki paramuki amuki shammandavane Sawa graha bandhanane nigrihidva Sawa bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha Savitva Buddha Mudra Nugatita Savamare Utsarita Parishuddhe Biga Shantu Savamara Kama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above my head, on lotus and the moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain me, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So today and for the next couple of sessions, we are looking at the very traditional teachings on karma. It's usually karma, cause and effect. Not just karma. Karma as cause and effect, which is what we'll be looking into. And I think many of you have received the support document, which is a module from my study course. And so a lot of the information we'll cover is in there very neatly on paper. In our last course, we looked at Buddha nature, which, how can you say, if we label it, is the most profound topic. But in truth, it's not. In itself, Buddha nature is the most profound thing, let's say, most profound experience. It can't get deeper, higher, purer, better, of course. But it's not that difficult for us to understand. Karma is far more difficult. So this is a funny course because in one way it's easy. The teachings on karma, they're in all the Buddhist traditions, they're very neatly laid out. 10 virtuous actions, 10 non-virtuous actions, immobility karma, and then all the common points that all the karmas share and so on. It's available in many places. Many of you have heard it perhaps many times. And so it looks straightforward. But those are the teachings on karma, which are, nice old English word, perforce, very general. The reality of karma is you. Not so simple. It's me. And it's what's happening every moment in our lives. That's the reality of it. And it's hellishly complex. You know, what goes on in our mind, why people do things, the emotional baggage that we've developed through the power of karma, the circumstances of life, parents, the list we made, parents, siblings, lovers, enemies, all of that have made this life story what it was. All of that is karma. It's totally unique for each person, and it's unique every moment and changing. So how the hell are you going to explain that? You can't. That's why when we looked at Buddha qualities, when we see Buddha, the wisest person who ever trod this earth, what is the Buddha's wisdom? It is just to know when Buddha has somebody in front of him, or her, whichever, it doesn't matter, then their karma is obvious. They know all the way back, however long it existed. So that, and then specifically, you know, if somebody came to me, went to a very, very even highest, most famous of the Buddhist teachers, and said, can you tell me my karma? You know, what I did last life, life before that, and then, you know, why did I end up as I am now? Well, when we study the text, it says some can, a bit. When you get arhats, for instance, and in the Shravaka tradition, they can go into deep meditation to seek the answer, and they can come out with some answers for a few lives back, and then bodhisattvas, depending on their level, have more knowledge and so on. But it is the most difficult topic to really understand clearly. You can only get to an understanding through meditation, through having a pure mind yourself, like a pure mirror that reflects. You can't do it through study, teaching. But it's also not just a hard topic, can you say, to present, to study, but to accept. There's a huge resistance in us Buddhists to accepting karma. Huge. Because the implications are enormous. Of course, if you are a dedicated Buddhist, you really believe and accept in your heart all the teachings, then this is what makes us do what we do. Make deep promises for this life, future lives, because we get it. We see what's going on. But then, even when that's the case, when life comes along with its delights, with its attractions, with its problems and challenges, it can be very, very hard to accept with clarity of mind. This is my karma, this is the karma of this situation. So one of the finest Dharma teachers I ever met, Khenpo, who is probably most famous Khenpo in Tibet just now. Once we were having a long talk about this, he said, Ken, he said, some people think shunyata, emptiness, voidness, madhyamika, Buddha nature, that these are very, very hard topics. He said, no way, they're not that hard. Karma is the hardest to really get. So I wanted to say that before we start. And I'd like to take us through what the module says. So maybe if you looked at the module, you'll have seen this. Bottom line, what are the karma teachings? It's the Buddhist way of approaching the question that we humans ask ourselves, not all, but many. Why? Why do things happen? Just now, all the things happening in our time, just now in the world. I was talking with Katya just over a cup of coffee before this talk. And we're old, so we knew the hippie generation. We were the hippie generation before they even called us hippies. We didn't know we were hippies then because the word didn't exist. We just did it, And we knew that time, but it's gone. I mean, it's gone completely. The spirit, everything. Many people never knew it. Will never know it, because how can you transmit it? It's just gone. Just gone. So, but why did that happen then? Now, why all these things that are happening these days, climate wars, all of that, whatever's going on? Why? And then why does this happen to me? Not to him, not to her. And why, no matter how hard I try, can I not do this? Or why, no matter how hard I try, do I carry on doing this? The things I do. Why? So what I did in the module is to give some of the main human answers. Of course, if you study philosophy, you'll probably get much more technical, much more accurate list than this. But some people say there's no why. Why is a human question? Somehow we evolved. When you see the story of evolution and animals creeping out the sea and developing brains and all the rest of it. No, we got a brain. And my brother-in-law used to say, the brain excretes thoughts like the kidneys excrete urine. So we just have become thinking beings, and we can concoct ideas, reasons of all sorts. It's not God created man, but man created God, that kind of thing. Humans created God. So some people say, no, this is just thinking. Things just happen, biologically, atomically. There's no greater cause behind it. no meaning. There's no bigger picture. There's no God or karma or anything. It just is, just the way things are. The rest is what we humans interpret. In ancient India, they used to say, a thorn is sharp. That's just what thorns are. There's no reason. Water's wet. And things happen. Haphazard. This one gets sick. This one doesn't get sick. This one's lucky in finance. The other one, not so lucky. Just is. Big biological, evolutionary accident. Or some say, yeah, so the second one says, there is nothing behind it, but we humans can give it meaning. And by giving it meaning, we can give our life purpose. So by giving an answer, whatever it is, this suffering is happening to me because God has given me this as an opportunity, or because karma, whatever it is, whatever fantasy we humans project onto our situation, we can use it to encourage ourselves to develop what we define as noble qualities. And there is something in there, we won't go into it today, but it's called natural Dharma, not Buddha Dharma, natural Dharma, whereby there are certain shared values amongst human beings. I'm not sure how true it is, but it says that people do respect an honest person, a constant person, a kind person, and someone who helps others. They do respect a gentle person who doesn't get angry, who's in control of their mind, and so on. There's a natural Dharma that gives us an idea of what are human qualities that are good to develop. And I think very much also our mentality of our modern society is evolving in this way. Before international communication and media and internet and all those other things, people were very local. You grew up with your local religion. That's all you ever knew all your life. Now, everything's accessible and it's all being stewed up so that there's a kind of general morality, general set of this is good, this is not good, we should do this, we shouldn't do that, that's emerging from the brew. So although it doesn't have inherent meaning or a big picture behind it, we humans can use circumstances that happen to me and not to you to make our life more noble, and our relationships with each other, our role in society, more noble. Others have the answer that there is something bigger behind it. And so one God, one creator God, a whole set of gods, or if not actual gods, beings up in their paradises or their heavens, cosmic energies, creative energies, destructive energies, which have a lot of meaning. So then, well, they write the story. And that's what makes things happen. And gods can be angry. They can decide to destroy a nation, or they can put us here with their own purpose, whatever it is, whatever the religion says. This is God's will, this is God's purpose, the reason why God created us humans, or a set of gods. There's that kind of idea. Or these days, on the media in France, at least, there's a lot of this. There's not gods, but there is life, the universe. So the universe is doing this to me, or the universe is testing me, or the universe is giving me an opportunity. There's a kind of a feeling of a something, not a somebody, but a something going on, where there is a moral fiber to it. And that is testing us and giving us challenges. And then all sorts of variants of this. People who believe in reincarnation think you get a kind of a parking lot between lives. And there you can sort of, now, in the next life, what challenges am I going to pick? What situations am I going to make? And then once you've done that, then, okay, it's like diving off a diving board. Here we go. One more life. Whee! And so, this is why I came here, in order to face. There are all sorts of explanations. But the main point of those, when you've got life, the universe, is that there is a feeling of morality and loss and gain and challenge to ourselves. So this list could be endless. The Buddhist version is that everything that happens through interdependence. Causes and effects, and more generally, causes and conditions and results. Causes, although we'll come to this later, another talk, a cause is unique. And if you take a flower, I always use poppy flower, I like the example. There is no way in this world you can get a poppy flower other than from a poppy seed. Maybe one day science can put it together molecule by molecule in a laboratory, but just now, no seed, no flower. Well, simple as that. The only possible cause for a poppy flower in this whole wide world of the billions of things is that seed. It's amazing. The seed, small, black, hard. So that's what we call a prime cause. The only thing in the world with the genetic programming for that result. So then that's causes. Conditions are what are necessary for that cause to produce what it can produce. No water, no sunlight, no heat, even though you've got the cause, potential cause, no poppy flower, whatever it might. But when you've got the cause and enough conditions, now the conditions, light, fertilizer, warmth, soil, water, they'll be the same for all the other seeds, similar. So conditions are more general, but prime cause is the only thing that can produce that result. When the result comes, the poppy flower, it's not black and hard. It's so fragile and red, waves in the wind. So anyway, Buddha's teaching is that everything that happens through causality. Nothing happens without cause. If it could, then just now I'm Ken, right? Human being, Ken, talking to you. If things could happen without cause, I could turn into a cauliflower in the next second, and you'd have a cauliflower on your screen. That's never going to happen. Never going to happen. Cauliflowers come from cauliflower seeds. Right? Ken came from my mum and dad. Right? They seeded me and my past karma. Everything. But now we must single out something. Out of all the causes and conditions that happen materially around us, What is it? Acid plus alkali, put them together, make salt plus water every time. And in all of our scientific training, then we see causes that make results. And science has got amazingly good. On the material level, this is important, but understanding what causes make which results, and then how we can interfere with causes to get the results we want. So the Buddhist teaching is causality. But then within causality, we have karma, cause and effect, which is what sentient beings create. There's a material universe that we perceive, at least. There's cause and effect happening all the time, but it's not karma in that sense. Karma is what sentient beings do. And we're not in the classical teachings on karma yet. This is Ken talking, right? I'm talking to you about things that are the fruit of my own reflection, observation, putting it all together over the years, and especially with respect to people's questions and dialogue with people about karma over the years. So maybe let me get back to the module text. Yeah, so Buddhism is not determinism, if that's the right word. It's not predestination. There is an element of choice. And that's one thing. And then what we're describing has its rules and laws, as in the material universe, but we have a problem with science. I have a problem with science. I hope you have a problem with science as time goes by too. Because science has developed over the centuries, millennia even. It is all based on material measurement, the measurement of matter, because that's what we can measure. We cannot measure mind. And we cannot measure the influence of mind on matter. Okay, quantum physics is trying these days. It's got a toe dabbled in that area, but still measuring it materially with material machines to see what's going on. Science is materialistic. It has to be. It works on proof, verification, all of that can only work if you have a material parameters. And this is a problem because the Buddha's teaching, and especially in Mahayana, is that what we are studying is like a dream. It's like a mirage. It's like a conjuration. It is the way things manifest to our mind. We have no objective way of measuring someone's karma because we're dealing with how they perceive what they call life is happening to them. Through their brain's interpretation of inputs through their five senses. Buddhism goes into this beautifully, accurately, has done for 2,500 years. How we are incarnated, how we experience through our sense doorways, how that makes our mental experience, how we've come to formulate that, build it up over a lifetime and lifetimes. And so there is a problem with science. So there's an example. Actually, I got this from a movie and I really enjoyed it. Eddie Murphy, Golden Child. Don't know if any of you have seen it. It's about a little incarnate Lama and good and evil and that kind of thing. Charles Dance is in it. Anyway, there's a dream sequence. So he's in a dream. It's like a lucid dream. And there's an audience that clap and applaud at certain times. But then at one point, a horse just kind of trots into the dream and then trots out again. So if you dream of a horse, it's a horse, right? It's grown up horse. All of your logic would tell you that it started off as a foal, a baby horse. You know, I remember one of my childhood experiences at primary school. It backed onto a field where there were traveling people who camped. And I saw a horse give birth. First time I'd ever seen anything give birth. And you see this kind of wet foal coming out the back end of a horse and then fall onto the ground, stand up and running, literally within hours. So you'd think, okay, if you're in a dream, this must have been a smaller horse, foal, and conceived, must have had a stallion and a mare to conceive it. That's the logic, isn't it? But tell me, does the horse in your dream, did it have parents? Where are they? And when you wake up, where did the horse go? So this dream-like, mirage-like, conjuration-like nature of existence is how Buddha says what would we say these days? Our subjective experience is like. We have no objective way of measuring it. It's subjective for each of us. Just now, Ken's talk is not Ken's talk. Some of you may be thinking, what rubbish? And some of you may be thinking, this is brilliant. You know? It's different for everybody. And so there is nothing, there's no objectivity. We're looking at something subjective. Now, I wanted to stop there because these are important points. I would like you to think about them. And have a bit of fun or something. So I want to share a picture, this one. Okay, can somebody wave a hand if you can see a picture? Okay, Now, this little creature is called Domodex. And we all have them in our skin. They live in the skin pores of our face. Normally we've got a few hundred. If you start getting tens of thousands, you've got a skin condition. They live for a couple of weeks. They eat. Fortunately, they eat dead skin, our dead skin. They live in the pores, our skin pores, especially in the face, especially in the eyelids and so on. And they come out at night time to mate. So they're sentient beings, primitive sentient beings that eat and that mate. So they're already kind of functioning on a primitive level. We can't see them because they're less than 1/3 of a millimeter long. But imagine you wake up in the night, if you've got a partner, and if you could see them, if you could see, like with magnifying eyes, you turn over and you see your partner with several hundred of these things crawling on his or her face, mating, eating. They're there, but we don't see them, so we don't know them. And then, I'm not bothering putting a picture on, but these tiny little dust mites that are in our beds and our pillows and so on, they're the same thing. hundreds, thousands of them. And so in our world, in the way we perceive, we're not aware of them, but they are there. It's just, let's stop this one. It's just to point out, to start to point out how subjective, how limited our own perception of reality is, but how totally personal, how unquantifiable. So it's subjective, and there won't be ever anybody that you'll ever meet, except perhaps Buddha, that will know you, no matter how close you are. I've been more than 50 years married to a fellow Buddhist, and all the same studies as me, same work and so on. Even then, nobody will ever know you. Your experience is not just unique, but it's totally, totally subjective. And even if a Buddha does know you 100%, they can't communicate with you how much they know you. It's huge. When we talk about karma, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about what happens out there. Now, what happens through karma has, and this is very important, it has a basic moral fiber. Let's take a ghastly example of killing. You could say, from, what can you say, materialistic, reductionist, simplistic point of view, well, second by second is different. A knife is just a whole load of atoms. On our level, we see steel, but if you come down, it's just a whole load of energies, electrons and things. And then the body that it penetrates and kills is just a load of cells and biology, more atoms and so on. If we go down onto an atomic level, there's no such thing as killing. There's just movements of atoms. A knife goes into somebody, they die, but on that level. And then even if we look at the person who's doing it, we go into their brain and see their brain activity. It's just neurons firing. There's this, there's that. You could well say, can you see it that way? That it's just, when we get down to the atomic level, it's chaos, Brownian motion. There's no such thing as killing there. There's just atoms moving around. There's electrical energy. But when we come up to our level of perception, not the atomic level, there's a somebody who's doing an act with a mind behind it, with an intention to make something happen, even if it's only for a few seconds, and they do it, they cause suffering to another person. So on our level, then there is the creation of karma. And because any karma that damages another being comes back to its doer, usually in future lives, as pain and suffering, and often there's something similar happening, then there is this moral dimension that we say it's not helpful, it's not healthy to harm each other, because not only do we harm each other, we harm ourselves. It's stupidity, it's damage, it's unnecessary suffering all round. And then when we help each other, that's good for our own mind, it helps somebody else, and it brings back to its doer good circumstances in future lives. So on our level, there is a moral dimension. And then, so I'm still waffling on about this topic of karma. What are we really looking at? And I want to share a little thing about the scale of the universe. I think I've shared it in at least one previous course. In a way, it's what I just said. If you go down to an atomic level or biological level, and if we just take seeing, we can't see down to that level. We don't see what's going on there. And even smaller than that, and smaller. And then if we zoomed out, like if I was standing in front of you, I can see you, your expression, your face. If I move back about 10 meters, it's a bit harder to work out what's going on. If I move back 100 meters, you're sort of more like not quite a dot, but you become nothing. And then if I zoom out even more, you disappear. You become just like, for me now, those Dharmacharya things in the skin. I can't see them, but they're there. So if our consciousness zoomed out, then all of this level of reality would disappear. So I thought we'd have a bit of fun. I've taken something that's on the internet called Scale of the Universe, and I've simplified it because it takes a bit too long, and put a few words on the top. So I'll share that now, just to reinforce this idea that with karma, we are talking about what happens on our subjective level of experience. And once it starts, if you can wave a hand, just so I know that you're seeing and hearing it, would be helpful. Human size, and our basis is 1 meter. So now we go down below a meter to the size of a mouse, tiny hummingbird, a quail's egg, a microwave wavelength, an ant to the size of an ant, and then smaller and smaller. 1,000th of a meter now to a dust mite, and the smallest things the naked eye can see. And then beyond our eyesight, cells, blood cells, nucleus, white blood cell, red blood cell, chromosomes, E. coli, bacterium. And now we're down to 1,000,000th of a meter, the smallest things that an optical microscope can see. And down to DNA size, X-ray wavelength, glucose molecules. So now we're beyond cells, we're down to molecule size. Water molecule. And now the smallest things an electron microscope can see, down to the size of an atom. And this is a 1,000,000th of a meter, an English 1,000,000th of a meter. We're down to the size of a uranium nucleus, chlorine nucleus. So now we're down to the nucleus of single elements, and then smaller than elements. And then we stop here for a moment. We jumped, because we could have gone down through a 1,000,000th of a 1,000,000th, and then a 1,000,000th of a 1,000,000th of a 1,000,000th, and keep going for all the different subatomic particles. There's quite a lot in the video I edited. And we've come down to the tiniest of all, which is called the quantum foam, the tiniest measure, which is called the Planck length. From here, we zoom back out all the way that we came back up, slow down a bit, through the levels of the molecules and cells, and then up to sort of things that can be seen, a dust mite, bacteria, and we're back in our visible world, and the earthworm, and the shrew, the teapot, and back to human size. So now we go the other way. What is bigger than us? And if we could exist on those levels, then things in our world would disappear. So now we are in the world of humans and animals and the living beings that we know about, trees, oak tree, giant redwood, a Boeing, the Titanic, the pyramids. When we move out, we get to a level where if we existed on that level, then humans would be like tiny ants or like dust mites are for us, too small to really take in. Mount Everest. And then some of the smaller moons of the planets in our solar system, countries like Italy. Pluto, the planet. So now we're on the level of planets, and on the level of a planet, of course, the tiny things like humans and animals don't exist anymore. We're in a world of planets and lots of space. And they put something in here about Minecraft. It's not relevant, but anyway. And then we're going to go from the size of planets to the size of solar systems, and then from stars to nebulae to galaxies. And what I did, I cut this one short as well, because we can go all the way up to the billions of stars in a galaxy and the billions of galaxies in the known universe. We continue zooming out from these large stars to even larger, some of the nebulae, and we'll keep going until we come to a light year. The distance traveled by light, which is so fast, in a whole year. That will become our measure for the greater distances. And here we leave the zoom to consider the Milky Way, which is our galaxy. So our sun is one of somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars in the Milky Way. And the Milky Way itself is just one of several 100 billion galaxies. It's one galaxy amongst several 100 billion in what we call the universe. This is the latest supercomputer simulation of the universe and the various galaxies and how they're distanced and relate to each other. So thank you. We'll leave this video here. Okay, so it's not directly relevant, but it really, I hope, helps bring home the point that when we're talking about karma, we are not so much talking about what goes on materially, but of course it has for us a material manifestation. We're talking about what we humans experience on our level, given that we only, like we have 5 senses, we pick up, between 5 and 10% of the electromagnetic spectrum only. So with what we can pick up, we have a reality that manifests in this brain of ours while we're alive. And that brain is highly conditioned, filtered by so many things. So when we're talking about karma, we're talking about mind and its experience. How the moral fiber of what we do and how the mind is important influences what appears to us as a material world, very, very interesting, beyond Ken to explain, but in the Abhidharma teachings from the Shravaka level, the idea is there is mind and there is matter. They both exist. And that basically mind drives matter. The moral power of what we do, the power of what we do, which has a moral fiber, is what makes the material consequences, the weather, the countries, the fact that people will fight, will be at war, and so on, and so on. In the Shravaka level of explanation, mind exists, material universe exists, mind is the boss. Mind drives matter. Of course, science has no way of measuring this. No way. No way. But scientific method is what the Buddha applied, because the Buddha's mind, and not just Buddha as an absolute end of the line, but as our awareness grows and grows and grows, we understand more and more, we can observe, quantify, and draw conclusions from our observations. So the Buddha, in what for us is enormous kindness, tells us the main guidelines that make this universe work as it does. And we call those karma, cause and effect. So not just causality, causes producing results, but causal processes involving a mental component and generating a mental experience as an outcome. So, by the way, this talk is not how I intended it, but it never really is. But I do think these are interesting things to say. It's things you won't find in the books. It's things that come from a lifetime of reflection and dialogue and talking with teachers. So just from the support document, a few things. I don't want to get into hot water because different Rinpoches say different things because they got different meanings behind the words, language problems. But some key points. One, not everything that happens is a result of past karma. This is a tricky one. It is and it isn't. But it's where Buddhists often get it, they make mistakes. So the example I've taken, given by Trangu Rinpoche, he says, if tomorrow you catch a cold, it's not that you did something in a past life that means that now you have to catch a cold. It means you're in a human body. So especially this time of year in the Northern Hemisphere, spring, sometimes it's such lovely weather, you go out, you don't have enough clothes on, you catch a cold. Simple as that. If you've got a body, you don't dress it enough, you go out in a breeze, you catch a cold. It's because you've got a body, that's the reason. Not because in some past life, man, you did something to somebody, and now, that's coming back to you like a boomerang. And this isn't just a cold, there's a reason behind this. And some people put reasons on everything. You see somebody walking down the street. Why did I see that person? Why did I see a person limping? And this, there must be a reason. No. So of course it is karma, because it's your karma to have a body. Once you've got a body, you can catch a cold. So the fact that you're human's your karma. The fact that you're vulnerable to colds is your karma. But whether you wisely dress up well or not, that's not your karma. So that's one point. Second is there is no learning purpose conspiracy behind this. God wants you to learn, or I've heard, oh, and it's painful to hear because I know it's not true. I used to spend lots and lots of time with Akon Rinpoche, talk with him a lot about his disciples, what's going on, and so on. And I'd hear people say, I don't know why Rinpoche is doing this to me, putting me through this, as though he's sitting in some sort of control room, master control room with all of his followers. And okay, today we're going to put this one through that, and this one through this. We're going to bring that person into their life, make them fall over and hurt their knee today. You know. People really say that kind of thing, or they used to. You know, my guru's doing this to me. It's a way of seeing things. Maybe it can be useful because it puts some kind of Dharma spin on things. But if sometimes I'd report back that to Akon Rinpoche, he'd look, his eyes would sort of, what? I'm not doing that to them. You know, and so no God, no Lama, most of the time. Sometimes Rinpoches do things to people, but then that's another story. But in general, not everything that happens is because you're like a puppet with the guru pulling the strings all the time. Not everything another point, not everything we do makes karma. As I mentioned earlier, 6 factors need to be present to make karma. And then depending on how powerfully or completely they are present, then there will be a very powerful, strong karma or a bit of karma. Not everything we do, because we're doing all day long, body, speech, and mind, is karma. Another point, we have choice. We're not fatalists, determinists, where it says no choice. I remember in 90, whenever it was, 90 I think, we had an interfaith 3-day symposium in Samiling, and we had a Hindu scholar arguing with Taisitupa. And Taisitupa was saying what I'm saying, that there is a degree of choice in karma. And Mr. Sharma said, no, you think you have choice, but you have no choice. You think I can choose this one or that one. But why are you going to choose that one? Look at your mind, you're bound to choose that one. So there was it didn't come to any conclusion. But the one was saying you have no choice. Even if you feel you have choices, you're more or less bound to choose what you're going to choose. So it's predestined, it's inevitable, story's already written, nothing to do. The Buddhist version very clearly is that there is some degree of choice. And we touched on this in the last course on Buddha nature with the Chittamatrins, 3 aspects of reality. What is conditioned, so what happens to us through past karma, and then what is imagined or projections, the way we relate to it. So when we go into that, we see there is choice. And then the last point, very important, I'm making here in the support document, is that karma creates circumstances that generally we call suffering, such as illness, such as aggression from other people. Whether we suffer or not, with time, there is choice. So rather than saying past actions cause suffering, they create circumstances which for, let's say, in the normal run of things, would be suffering, but we are not obliged to suffer. How we relate to suffering, as I said before this session started, talking about a person in Samiling who was dying. That person's illness became their Dharma motor force, very powerful, and actually was considered by the person the greatest blessing they had ever had. The illness, it really was. We all saw it. It wasn't fake. So although it will be defined as suffering, whether we suffer or not is not inevitable. So now if we come, that's all been me talking around the topic to try and show us help us understand what we're talking about. Now I'd like to go and start the formal teachings, even though we've nearly finished the session. And so now we're with Gampopa. And so I mentioned earlier, the Buddhist version is not God, not accident, not no cause, it's karma. Karma. Karma means action. Karma is a Sanskrit word. It means to do, to act. It's quite interesting. It's like the Greek word drama means to act. Of course, when we translate into English, acting, drama, but doing action. And karma, drama, same thing. So the worlds have been made by actions. The worlds. This is from the Mahakaruna Pundarika Sutra, great Compassion Lotus Sutra. Worlds have been made by actions. Did anyone go boing, boom? Worlds? Those worlds we just saw, planets, galaxies, universes, the world that we experience, where it rains, where you've got war or peace, and everything else. Worlds have been made by our actions. Ooh. Okay, big point. I hope you don't get indigestion. Their manifestation is due to actions. They're not just words. Next thing. Sentient beings have been created by karma, by actions. They have their cause in actions, and they owe their differences to their karma, to their actions, to their past actions. The Abhidharma teachings also say the various worlds were generated by actions. So action, karma, these two words, interchangeable. Abhidharma says, if you wonder, what do we mean by action or karma? There are two main areas. The activity of the mind and activity due to the mind, due to the mind's intention. So then when we boil down what is done because of the mind, then we talk about body and speech. So there are things we say, that we communicate, how we communicate, that we say. And there are the things we do physically with our body. Although it may not seem like it sometimes, we are not out of control robots that just say things and do things with our bodies. Somewhere behind it is our mind, our intention. And when we're looking at the power of karma and actions, we are looking at the power of intended action. So much to think about, you know. It means the more you know, the more you're mindful, the more you're aware, the more you're aware of your own intention, of the mind behind what you do, what you say, how we use our body in this world with respect to each other. Your karma is more powerful the more informed that you are. Because people sometimes ask, but how could it be if you were reborn an animal? You know, most animals kill each other all the time. You're just going to make worse and worse karma. You're going to go down and down. Is there any way out? I saw a thing the other day where a school had decided that they'd have a project and go out and kill cats, because cats kill birds. You know, one cat in a cat's lifetime kills lots of birds and other animals that are now more and more vital for our environment. So the school kids had decided they were going to go out and kill cats. And then before they actually got round to doing it, the teachers said maybe not a good idea. And so, you know, one would think, how can you ever get out once you're become an animal and you're killing, you're just going to make more karma, it's going to get worse. But the point is, the karma that an animal makes, karmas that animals don't know about, the moral fiber of the universe. They just act immediately on their impulses. That's what animals do. We humans know better. And then the more we're informed, and especially the more you're Buddhist informed about karma, then the more powerful your karma is. So then we have body, speech, and mind. Now, the categories are three. That's the way the teachings go. We start with what is, let's use the word, unvirtuous action, unvirtuous karma, cause and effect. We look at the causes and the effects they go, and that we call non-virtue, immoral, bad. Well, we mustn't use words like that. But non-virtuous. Causes and results. So Buddha describes those first. Why? Because the most vital thing in our Buddhist practice, where we must start, is by stopping harming each other and by stopping harming ourselves. Buddha said, especially in this time that we live at present, it's called the 6th of 10 periods during which his teachings last. In this time, restraining oneself from harmful action will be as powerful and as virtuous as it was to do the magnificent virtuous deeds at the time of Buddha and in the period after the Buddha. Said the power, the downward pull in our age, the lack of morality, the increase in sexual desire, sexuality, crime, everything, dishonesty. The pull is so great that simply to resist it is great virtue in this time. When we come later on in the second section of this course to commitments, we understand that Buddhist vows, precepts, they're so beautiful because they are our protection, our limits that we set ourselves happily, so that we do not harm each other, and in the process, don't harm ourselves. So first and foremost, of the three categories, there is unvirtuous karma, things we must stop, diminish, because they're no good. Beginning, middle, and end, no good, nothing but damage. Second, the opposites, we need to know what is virtue, the body, speech, and mind. And then third, very interesting for us because as Buddhists we meditate, is called the karma of immobility or unwavering karma. So normally action means doing, action to do, act. But what karma can you make when you don't do? When your body is still, when your mind is still, when we practice shamatha and all the other meditations, what does that action of non-acting, what does it produce, can it produce as results in terms of rebirth? So in our next session, then we'll come to the very, very famous list. We go through 10 prime unvirtuous actions, their opposite, 10 prime virtuous actions. We'll look at them in detail by categories, and we'll see them as cause and result in general. If you do this with such and such a motivation, then this will be the sort of outcome in future lives. in general about karma, then it says only the Buddha knows really all about karma. But it says more generally, if you want to know your karma, what you did, karma you made, the actions you did in past lives, then your life now will give you many clues as to some of it. So now, for instance, if you've got not terrific financial karma, then maybe in the past you were maybe not so honest, and maybe you cheated or stole to various degrees. If in this life your relationship karma with other people, emotional, romantic relationships, if it's inharmonious, what can you say in worldly terms, successful, then in last life you were probably practicing virtuous sexual relationships, virtuous relationships can help the sexual side as well. If it's the other way around and your partners don't last, they cheat on you, there's problems and so on, then it's probably that you did something similar in the past lives. And then if our own body is damaged in this life, if we get aggression, if we get sickness and so on, then that is probably because we harmed others' bodies in past lives. So in general, it's saying, if you want to understand something of your previous lives' karma, well, look where you ended up now. That's you, that's your story. The guy next door's got a different story, better, worse, whatever it is, but your story is the result of your past. So we can get some idea, and especially an idea of where we must be very careful, because we don't have such good karma in that area. And then it says, if you want to know your future life karma, look at what you're doing now. And then check it out with the Buddha's guidelines. And that would tell you. Karma, cause and effect, which we've seen today, is about our subjective experience of reality on this level of experience we have as humans, not an atomic level, not a galactic level, but a level of an embodied human being. This karma that's your life, my life, implicit to the understanding, and what makes the karma teachings very hard to face full on and honestly, is an implication of many, many past lives and many future lives to come. And for us Buddhists, very deep, powerful reflection of acting for the long term rather than the shorter term. So I think that's most of what I wanted to say today. It's not really. I wanted to say a lot more. But these peripheral points, to put it into perspective, for me, are very important. And we have a couple of sessions on karma. So in the next session, we'll look at the lists and the details, very, very classical. In the third session, we'll look at interdependence more generally, 12 links, quite quickly. And we'll also, I think that's the third session. The fourth session, if I remember, we'll look at the karma of meditation, immobility karma. It's quite interesting. Then after that, we go on to what can we do about karma, which is the power of moral commitments, vows, precepts, bodhisattva vow, vajrayana, samaya. We'll look at that over a couple of sessions. So thank you all very much. And now we'll dedicate, and in English, may whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. Through the main enemy, the mind defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every being, every sentient being, become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it has not arisen. May its development know no setbacks. May it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Thank you very much. So now, over to you. Over to you. And hello to those who joined after I said hello to everybody, Val, Jack, Graham, everyone who joined.
Hi, Ken. At the beginning, you talked about when somebody's reborn, that all this intellectual or understanding that we have now, it all goes, and we can't even understand what people are saying. But there's also something that seems to carry on. Like when we're very young, if we have a particular, for want of a better word, talent, does that come from a previous life? I mean, we have the examples of child prodigies. Often it's mathematics or being able to play chess or music. So that would seem to come from somewhere in previous. And that at a different level, perhaps, we have the example of tulkus who, at a young age, when they start learning, learning in inverted commas, they can sort of read a book, read through a page, and it's not that they learn it, it's just that they remember it. It seems to me.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and it's really interesting. I've never seen it outlined in a text. I've got information from direct teachings from teachers like Taisitupa and so on. And then there's very, very interesting research that was done in, I think, Virginia University over about 30 years or more about young children with past life memories. There's a lot of statistical research. They studied thousands and thousands of cases of children with a narrative that didn't correspond at all to their actual environment. And then they went on later to actually try and check out the stories and see if they could find the place in the previous life. And they checked out a few. So that's academic research. It's very, very interesting. And so what it would seem to be is that we go through the bardo in between lives, and then we're born, there isn't anything left. Our own structure, nervous system, brain, and so on, and tools like language need to come in from the environment. And then it seems that from the age of 2, 3, and in the past it was up to about 5 or 6, because in the past kids didn't go to school and preschool and creche so early as they do now. Now kids are often parked somewhere even when they're very, very young. So in the time when the children were with their parents and before they were getting learning from a group situation like school, then many children would start to talk about my real mother, for instance, which was very disturbing for their parents because they'd say, my real mum. I actually have one friend whose young daughter said once, when I was your mum in the last life. And so there are things like this, and they can check them out. So what happens in the different phases? Last year before last, Taisitupa talked in public about general tranche of age, like from 0 to 8, 8 to 15, 16, and from there, the next phase. Anyway, different stuff from past life does come back. So what we're looking at is that in this life, some things are powerful enough to imprint the stream of consciousness that they survive death and come up in the next life. So one is language. Although we can't speak, as the brain and body develops, and as we pick up language and language structure and start to structure our brains so that we can deal with language and concepts, then we'll find it much easier to learn some languages than others. So that it's said that past life languages will come back quickly. So you might have a propensity for French. Even if you're born in an English-speaking place, you'll learn French quickly. And I know some languages I picked up words and expressions very quickly. Others, I could repeat it for hours for one day and think I've learned 2 phrases of Chinese, and the next day it will be gone. So there's propensity, like you said, for music and for mathematics. If we've been there before, it can come back. For Dharma, many people I meet, many people here, as soon as you start hearing Dharma, you feel like you're coming home. It's like I've always known this. Yeah. This is the first time I've heard it expressed, articulated. Yet for other people, the same teachings, it's kind of, what? I watched the Taisitupa webcast the other day, and there were all the comments, the usual sort of clasped hands and hearts and all the rest of it. But one of them said, does anyone understand a word of what he's saying? So, you know what, for some people, it's like, I've been waiting all my life to hear this. He's like, what on earth are these Buddhist people into? Like, wow. So, yeah, how it comes back, the time it comes back, and especially in terms of karma, it's really interesting once people are let free from the family environment, when they go to university, when they get independent, have their own place. It's only then that certain karmas come up. So that was a vague answer, but the thing is, some things from this life survive death. A lot doesn't. A lot, as far as I can tell from the tantric teachings, it's like the brain is like a hard drive with data. When you die, you leave the brain behind, and the language structures, so much is it's just simply left behind, because we've used all of our life, we've used the brain like a computer uses a hard drive. But some things aren't, it's not everything's in the brain. Some things imprint the stream of consciousness. And then in particular, we'll see with karma, highly motivated karmic actions, big anger, big love, big bodhicitta, really can imprint very deeply. They can change the course of future lives. And Dharma in particular has a powerful imprint.
Ken, could you say a little bit more about how one works with, say, sickness and uses the sickness as the spiritual path itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, it's mainly dealt with, well, I've heard it dealt with in two ways. One, technically in the teachings on the paramita of forbearance, which many people call patience, but forbearance. And there we get two sets of teachings from the two main Mahayana traditions. And like one of them, it has 9 main points. So we tackle the challenge from various angles. There's not just the one answer. And each of them is interesting. So I've heard it treated technically from those teachings on the paramita of forbearance, which may well be in the next course in this series, by the way. And then the other way is simply through hearing lots of lamas' advice to people who come to them with various types of sickness or degrees of sickness, and just their own instructions. So the advice will depend very much where the person is at with their own practice, the tools that they've already got. For instance, if somebody has done the Tonglen practice, then Tonglen is just an amazing tool for relating to one's own sickness. The main point in Mahayana is to accept with grace our own karma, and through our own karma to become much more aware of other people's suffering, and to use our own experience of hurting physically or mentally to awaken a deeper compassion for others. And then by consequence, that compassion leads us on to Dharma, because how can we really help others? Just now, beside having nice thoughts or Tonglen thoughts and sending goodness, wishing if only I could take the suffering, in the long term, how can I really help others? And then we look, well, who does help others? How do they do it? And we realize that bodhicitta and our Dharma practice is our long-term investment to help others. And incidentally, it's the very best medicine for the karma that we carry to have this particular challenging situation. But maybe this isn't the only one. In our past karma, sometimes some karmas mean we might spend more than one life with this type of situation. Can't tell. It might last a day, a month, 10 years, 10 lifetimes. So in general, like compassion, especially if we do Chinrezig practice, is the great healer for the karma that we carry. There are a few first thoughts, Vicky, about relating to it, but really the beauty is in the detail, and the detail is in the forbearance paramita teachings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very interesting, Ken. May I just ask a quick question, please?
Mm-hmm.
I was intrigued when you were talking about mind driving matter. I think you described that as a Shravaka view. I was curious whether you could unpack that a little bit. Is that kind of to do with the choice that we have, or is there more of the moral dimension involved?
Yeah. So that's the Shravaka view. In Mahayana, we've got it a lot easier. Everything's mind, okay? Everything's mind. So we don't have a technical problem of how does mind drive matter, right? how could mind
Yes.
drive matter? Mind can influence mind. Anyway, but in that version, then it's obvious that there's causality at play in the world we're confronted with, and that goes back to causes that had their own causes that had their own causes. So when we look at the environment we're in, when we look at the city we're in, it's a city that developed through history, and then that influenced the environment, and then everything the planet's been doing and how it's been moving around the sun, and so how it is today materially. We're talking about matter, the molecules, what they're doing with the weather, with the crops, with the cities and the towns, is a process of causality. And then the people we meet, they were made by their mums and dads, and they grew up in the places they grew up in. They got influenced by their school, their environment, they learned to think and so on. Why was their school like that? Why was the country they lived in like that? Causes behind it's endless processes of causality. So then why are all the atoms and the body cells and the brain cells and so on, why are they acting in the way they do? Buddhist answer is because of the power of past actions. Our own actions, our actions as couples, our actions as families, our actions as groups in society, our actions as nations against each other, where we, in our mind, subscribe to what our nation does. So even if we never fire a bullet, if we're behind our nation that is firing bullets, we get firing bullets karma to a certain degree. So the idea is that past karma, going back and back and back, causes behind causes, that our mind, basically from our mind, why did we have the desire that made us kill those animals? Why did we have the anger that made us say this thing to those people? The power of the mind, and our mind, and couple mind and group mind and nations' minds, act through time to produce the story we're experiencing now. So when you think about that and sit back and step back and think about it, there is a huge moral quality to it. And it brings up some atomic questions, and people get very angry at Buddhists. They say, how can you say that these innocent children who were killed, who were raped, that it was their karma for that to happen? Because it sounds absolutely horrible. We really need to understand what's being said. We do say, because we believe in karma, but it doesn't mean they're to blame. It doesn't mean they deserve it. It doesn't mean it's their fault. And for that, we need to really understand karma. And the best way is with ourselves. This is what the 16th Karmapa encourages us to do. Who we were in past lives to make the karma we carry now is a different person. We're not that person anymore. We're not that person anymore. We're not to blame. So I think for me, a very good example of that, for me in my life, this kind of a good example, is smoking, fags. When I was a hippie, a very poor hippie, I would hunt around for little ends of cigarette, they're called dog ends in English, to put together the little bits of tobacco to make one whole cigarette. I even wrote a song when I was a hippie called Golden Virginia, in praise of Golden Virginia tobacco, and I had enough money to buy some, right? I smoked for about 11 years, from the age of 14 to 23. Akon Rinpoche came into my refuge retreat. I had to do a 7-day retreat after refuge. He said, oh, and by the way, you'll stop smoking. all right. And it was funny because I'd tried before and I never succeeded. No problem after that. So I did that when I was younger. I changed. My house in Samiling is about 70 meters, maybe less, from the official smoking spot. So when the wind's in the wrong direction, the tobacco smell makes me feel sick. You know, it literally makes me feel sick. I can't stand it. I'm not that person. But one of the reasons I got cancer a couple of years ago is without doubt because I smoked earlier on. It's there. It's in the stream, you know, the story of my body. I'm not that person. I wished I'd never had done, but I did. And I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It's what we did. We smoked cigarettes, we smoked dope, we smoked chillums, we smoked all sorts of things. And so the consequences. So it's like that. Karma mind, the mind that we had then, drives the actions, makes the power that makes the present reality happen. So, but it's hard questions. It's hard questions. And when people practice intensely and their karma ripens, you know, why is this happening to me? It seems so unfair. So unfair. And in human terms, it is bloody unfair. It really is unfair. But if we believe in karma, just stepping back from a scientific point of view, I was trained as a scientist. What do you do when you don't have the answer? You take models, you take theories. The God theory, the just a big accident theory, and all of them, and you compare them to see which fits the facts. You throw away the theories where it really doesn't seem to fit the facts of what happens. And you're left with a few quite possible models, and then you see which model fits best. So all the innocent people killed in war by bombing, including the children. Okay, it's terrible. But then the very nations that are now bombing those children, they're full of families, parents, children, talk with each other, and who approve of the bombing. They're taking part in it. And some people are physically taking part in it. When you look at the results, you look at the causes. The causes for future suffering, they're all around us. People hurting each other, nations hurting each other, couples hurting each other. So it makes a lot of sense. Sorry, that was a long answer, James, but
no, beautiful answer, Ken. Like you say, the outcome of all that is huge.
yeah.
And it seems that the choice we have today, right now, that really, really matters. Sorry if that's a very obvious thing to say, but
No, but it really does. For the obvious reasons that anyone can see, because we live in a time of where there is a lot of moral challenge, moral dilemma. But if you believe in karma, it's huge.
But a choice not just in front of what's right in front of me here and now, but to do with the people near me and the nation and all the goings-ons out there.
More than that, it's how in this life we position ourselves with everything, and this is really what the second part of the course is about, is what the Bodhisattva teaching is about. No matter what's happening out there, you know who you are, who you're going to be. I am never going to do that. I believe in non-violence. I believe in caring and loving for other people, whatever it is, all the Bodhisattva values. We define ourselves, and if we do that strongly enough, day after day, through our prayers, through our practice, through our actions, then this is a game changer for the future lives. So there's what there is immediately, of course. But the bigger question is, it's amazing. What is this life that we have and what we can do with it? Potential. It's amazing.
Sorry to keep going on, but that's very meaningful for me, the how I position myself, because that drills down to genuine intention.
Yeah.
Part of my work has involved studying psychology and the perceptive filter and the degree to which we kid ourselves, and so easily kid ourselves.
Yeah.
But drilling through that to our true intention. Yeah. Would you? Yeah. Okay, I'll stop. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, James. Thank you. Helen?
Oh, I really struggle. I'm noticing how much I really struggle with the actions that I do on the telephone. It's just it's such a powerful thing, but when I come off the telephone, I'm so aware now of either I'm diminished by the whole connection that's happened or lack of connection. And then I go over what I think, how did I become that person and say all those things? And it's just a very odd experience. It's not me, but it is me. And yeah, it's just something I'm grappling with at the moment.
Good luck, but I think it's a good thing because at least there's this background awareness of what's going on, that you can see yourself. We see our relative selves, and that's already a huge start. It gives us a ground, a basis, a reason for changing our speech karma in that case. Without that objectivity, without that mirror-like situation, we just carry on. I was saying earlier on, like mindless robots, we just say the things we say, we react the way we do. We become mindful, more mindful robots, and they're not robots at all. Good luck. Huh? Good luck. Okay, I think we did the dedication so earlier on, and I wish you all very, very well, and see many of you next week. Okay, take good care, everybody, and warm hello to those I didn't say hello to at the beginning. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Ken.
Ciao now. Ciao, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.